Hi there, my name's Bailie. I'm the General Manager of Products and Innovation at InfoTrack. I'm very pleased today to have David Bowles from the Queensland Law Society with me. Thank you for joining, David.
G'day Lee, how's it going?
Very good, thanks, very good. And these obviously different and challenging times, but as we were just saying prior to the call, I think we are getting used to it. So it's good to have you here on a conference call this afternoon to talk about a few of the things impacting the profession in Queensland at the moment.
Thank you very much.
So I might just jump into it, David. I might start with a bit of an open one. Currently, with all that is going on with COVID-19 in Queensland, what impacts are you seeing on the legal profession?
Well, they're certainly fairly dramatic, and it's not just small firms; it's throughout the entire ecosystem. There's been a huge financial impact, as you can imagine, and a great many firms are doing work now for clients that they know are possibly insolvent, and they're really very concerned that these clients' relationships that they've built up over many years might be disappearing underneath them. So there's that financial aspect. As you know, a good many small firms are under stress anyway, and this has been, a truly very significant blow to them as well. On the whole, in terms of just getting the work out the door, I've been very impressed with the way that Queensland practitioners have been able to do that. On the whole, have just rolled up their sleeves, got stuck in, and really just making the best with what they've got available and getting stuck in and doing it. So I'm really, generally speaking, the people we've encountered have done a very good job of that. And, on the whole, have just been approaching us for, practical help about how you witness this, how you connect with that, how you get the courts filing, all of that sort of thing.
Australians are bred very resilient, and I think the legal profession likewise is a very resilient profession. I think we find ways to navigate these challenging times. Is there any particular success stories or, I guess, elements that you've seen in how lawyers have been battling the situation with COVID-19? Is there anything you've noticed or picked up?
Well, certainly their ability to transition into the new reality. So, firms that have been not particularly quick to pick up on technical innovation, very quickly worked out how to do the video conferencing, how to push their data systems to the cloud very quickly, how to get things connected and working. So even firms for whom that is a real challenge have risen to that challenge. And on the whole, the big end of town already had that in place. The little guys tended to be quite resilient because of their, the small infrastructure. It's quicker to pivot. Mid-sized firms, I think, took probably the biggest hit because they've got a lot of legacy systems which invest in local area networks and that sort of thing. So they've had the toughest job, but most of them are well and truly able to work remotely now, and I think they've got that pretty well sorted out. In terms of particular sectors, the criminal law firms have had a real challenge because obviously, as you know, dealing with people who are incarcerated, there was that physical risk to them. Real challenge, desperate to get people out of jail who didn't need to be there because of the risk to the clients. And also, as you know, criminal law tends to be very face-to-face and group meetings. So they've had a really significant challenge too. And, they've just not slept in terms of what they've needed to do to make sure that the only people in Queensland jails are the ones who really need to be there for the public safety.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be a very a challenging environment at the best of times, but a very extremely challenging environment now. And I guess, David, that leads me on to something, and we've had a couple of discussions about this previously. It's one of probably our passions at the moment, unfortunately.
Yep.
The cybersecurity concerns that we now see, and they've always been prevalent in not necessarily any area of law, I guess, but also in business as a whole. Are you seeing more concerns around that as people are working from home? Do you feel that there is greater diligence now placed on that by all types of law firms?
Well, yes. From my perspective, as obviously somebody who's essentially trying to lead the Queensland profession in that respect, the people are losing sleep, but not as much as they should. This has been a very challenging environment. Criminals, as you know, thrive on chaos. They really enjoy disruption, and that we've had a great deal. Law enforcement and the insurers are all reporting a big uptick in attacks on all sorts of firms, particularly professional services firms. that are in part impacted by this forced march to remote working, but also people who are distracted and upset and worried about other things. It's far more likely going to click on the wrong link when you're worried about your dad and you're worried about whether you're going to have a job next week or not. So there's this perfect storm that has led to an increased threat environment, and unfortunately we've seen the criminals very quick to step in and take advantage of that.
Yes, I think I read a figure last week that said Google currently is blocking nearly 18 million phishing email attempts per day. And now I know that's globally, but
yes,
a part of that would obviously be coming to Australia and be coming to Queensland. You recently shared some intelligence with us about I think if I'm right, it was a Trojan horse attempt on a firm with was it Gozi Injects was the name of the virus. Do you want to elaborate a little bit just to share with some of our listeners what actually happened there without obviously naming names? But
yeah, sure. Yeah, as I said, loss of sleep is the phrase that I used, and it's certainly one that's been keeping me up at night. And I think anyone that runs a trust account needs to take very close attention to this particular problem. So the story was a pretty straightforward one. A regional firm in Queensland couldn't log into their trust account, and fortunately they were on the ball. They didn't just sort of write it off as a COVID network glitch. They said, no, there's something not quite right here. They persisted. When they couldn't get onto the website, they got straight onto the bank. The bank told them that there were transactions going on, or one had been affected during their lockout period. And they very quickly ascertained that $40,000 had been withdrawn from their trust account without authorization. So that money was still in the UK. The bank traced it that far, but certainly, a lot of these things, they happen on Fridays because the attackers hope that you will not notice it over the weekend. And it was a very, very bad weekend for the practitioner who was responsible for that money. So as you're probably aware, it doesn't really matter how it happens. When a trustee loses funds, they are often liable for that personally. And it's a very, very unpleasant experience. So from that firm's perspective, that was, truly horrible weekend for them. And this is a first. As far as I know, it's the first in Australia. It's definitely the first in Queensland, because usually, as you're aware, the usual way that money is stolen is by tricking somebody in the firm into diverting it to the wrong account. But this is far more insidious. So effectively, the malware got onto the system, the firm sat down and they just did a standard transfer. So they are looking up at their normal screen, which shows the transfer to a bank account number of a certain amount. They triple check the bank account number. They did all the things that you're supposed to do. But what the software does is change the bank account number in the browser, so you can't see that. It's an invisible process that happens between your computer and the bank. And they can also change the amount. So if you're just refunding a couple of $1,000s to a client, they can turn that into 10 times that amount. So the reason it was such a low amount is because they didn't want to trigger the bank's internal warning system, but quite clearly it was a test process. So if these guys had been left in charge of that trust account over the weekend, I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that the firm would have come back on Monday morning and found that the millions of dollars which were in there would have been flat out gone. So that's the type of attack and the type of evolution that the profession now needs to deal with. And unfortunately, it's been building for a while, but this is now a reality. And this was a small firm in a regional town. Everybody is in the firing line here.
David, we've had this conversation a few times, and
yes.
I think the criminal activity out there is not only starting to, gather pace. I think, as you said earlier, the term, they jump on it when there's disruption, chaos in the marketplace, and we're seeing that at the moment. And people do let their guard down through sleep deprivation, through literally, doing 2 or 3 jobs and managing multiple tasks at a time. I think you're aware that we have at InfoTrack, we have our cybersecurity training, awareness training that we've been running for a period of time now. Really pleasingly, we've seen a number of our clients and mutual clients of the Queensland Law Society and InfoTrack take up that complimentary training and earn the CBD point. We also have our environment secure exchange, which is the environment built around sharing both confidential documents, but also financial details such as bank accounts in a secure environment. And as you would expect, we've had quite a lot of interest from both our lawyers and conveyancers around the country and Queensland, but also real estate agents now as well, interested in actually using that environment. Is there any other quick tips you have for, I guess, law firms of any size just being across this sort of cybersecurity environment during these challenging times?
Yes. The key takeaway message that I would like to try and get across, and I do at every opportunity, is that this is a matter of governance as opposed to a technical problem. So we use the word cybersecurity, but it's really information security and fraud resistance. And that involves taking all the moving parts of the firm. So how people do their job, what the firm policies are, how well those policies are explained and followed, and also the basic network that the people are operating on. And it takes a broad protection of introducing all of those elements to get to the level of security that even a small firm needs. So probably the single biggest mistake you can make is just say, look, this is an IT problem. I don't really understand IT, so I'm just going to have to wing it. Or to attempt to delegate to your IT department or your IT service provider, because they can do part of it. They can do, the 1/3 leg, which is of the security tripod, which is the technology aspects. And so in this particular case, to the GOSI injects, what you need to do is make sure that your firm network is scrupulously updated. So operating systems are updated as humanly possible. The browsers in particular are running the latest versions of their software, because as you're aware, there's this permanent cold war between the software companies and the hackers, and they will usually, the software companies will usually have a solution out there for you, but it doesn't do you any good if you haven't downloaded it and updated all the software. So you've got to really make sure that that's happening. Now, in this particular case, the malware came into the firm attached to an invoice which their bookkeeper had received. So the training that you referred to is extremely useful, because that points to just reminding people to be cautious about the kinds of attachments that they're opening. So in this particular case, and unfortunately it's not going to be always the case, the malware was in a zip file which said invoice, and not a lot of reason for an invoice to be in a zip file. So that was possibly a warning for them for next time. But unfortunately, they can also hide that kind of malware inside an actual Word document itself and run, a macro virus. So again, there is a technical solution to that, but it's one that's sort of difficult. So once again, the training for the people, as you've mentioned, the technology aspect, and also firm processes and procedures. So in this case, the reason why the firm had a happy outcome was because they rigorously checked their trust account every day. And their trust accounts administrator knows that if there's something wrong, they follow up on it straight away. They don't just sort of shrug and say, oh, we'll try again in the afternoon. So it was that combination of people, process, and technology that always makes sure that there is a shield between you and the attacker. Now, I think that's the best that we can really say. And there are processes that we can assist people with. So anyone that would like to look at their own firm's security, get a hold of us at the Queensland Law Society. We have free programs available that can just help you to assess where your current security profile is, and then what you can do about it. And what's surprising is that it often doesn't involve huge amounts of money, actually. It's commonly something that a small firm practitioner can, they won't be able to do all of it themselves, but they will be able to certainly direct it themselves, and they are the person that is best placed to move all of the moving parts together to make sure that the firm is well protected.
No, thank you, David. And I think that's some great advice. And I mean, the people, process, and technology, I think really aligns to, something I've often speak to our clients about is that sort of culture, governance, and technology. Same, as if you've got a culture, a cyber security culture, and people are actually aware of that, and it can lead to the processes being improved. And, it's a simple analogy, but I often look at it, it's like protecting your own home. Most people have a front door with a lock on it, but if you want to put a security screen in place, if you want to put a burglary system in place, if you want to have a dog in your yard, you're building on top of that sort of security. And I guess, cybersecurity is very similar.
Yes, that's right.
I might just change tact if I can a second,
Sure.
David, and just sort of, as you know, within InfoTrack, we work with a lot of lawyers and conveyancers, and predominantly in the property space at the moment. You've obviously, QLS have launched a support package, I think, to help law firms through this period of time. We've done one are very similar to that ourselves, talking about those remote services that can be used. And, you know, such as Sign It, our electronic signing functionality, web VOI, so that someone can actually complete a verification of identity remotely, subject to the RNEC rule changes that have come out of late.
Yeah.
What does the QLS care package entail, and how's that going at the moment?
Basically it's split into two halves. So the first is financial relief. So that's a $9 million package that's spread out across the Queensland profession. So things like 50% reduction in the membership fee, 25% reduction in the practicing certificate costs, and other big ticket item is 20% reduction in insurance. So all of that adds up to a significant and appreciable assistance for law firms who'll be doing it tough. The other side is increased services and increased support. So advisory services for the government funding options, which are available both to practitioners wearing their small business owner hat, and also for those who advise small businesses and who will be dealing with desperate clients, and sort of what support is available from the government for that. Employment law advice, what you can, what you can't do in managing your own staff, and trying to keep people furloughed and still in a job versus cutting the tether altogether. And also as much assistance as you require from experienced practice managers. So you just ring up with a practice support problem, implementing this or that, and they can talk you through it. And they're all people who've been doing it themselves for many years and who have experience in both large and small firms.
That sounds very comprehensive, and obviously the financial piece is critical for people at the moment. And I guess that's one of the elements, particularly here in Queensland, where we haven't got the mandating of electronic settlement at this stage. Some, as you pointed out at the beginning of our conversation, David, some practitioners are very keen and readily to jump on board with the virtual or the remote solutions, others not so much. And, we've been pleased to see that some of your members and our clients have been able to sort of trial some of these products around the web VOI and the Sign It products. Complementary at the moment, but at least it gives them that taste of it to go, actually, maybe it's not that difficult to make this transition. But, with that in mind, and Queensland not being mandated on the e-settlement, how are you seeing that impact on the market at the moment, and maybe specifically around some of those that haven't registered with an LNO, such as PEXA or Simply at this stage, and aren't ready to do that? Have you had much inquiry about that or interest?
Well, we've certainly been making sure that people have all of the information that they need. And so I've spoken to a lot of people about electronic conveyancing over the years, and the attitude of the standard Queensland practitioner is quite accepting to it. Like, they certainly see it as the way of the future. And the reluctance that you've probably seen in Queensland is more, I don't have a problem with it, but I just don't see it that it's for me now. And so for a great many firms, they felt that the changing environment has shifted the business case so that it now makes sense for them to take that leap. And we've tried to do the best we can to make sure that everyone who is interested in doing that has as a shallow and on-ramp as possible, so that you can just access the resources necessary to do it. And I think there's been a very significant increase in the number of people registering for electronic conveyancing, and for the number of people that are actually practically using it. And the feedback that we're getting is, hey, that wasn't quite as hard as I thought it was going to be, and I actually quite like it. And it frees up time, not only the remote aspects of it, but it just frees up time for them to be doing what they want to do, which is talking to clients and making sure the clients are happy. So I think there was this reluctance, in part because people thought, well, I am not really that technologically inclined, and my clients aren't either. But I think that's a bit of a misconception, because what this technology can do is just give you time back. And instead of spending 45 minutes trying to log in a settlement, you can spend 5 minutes doing that, 5 minutes sending out the pro forma letter, and then 10 minutes just calling the client and making sure that they're really happy with the process that you've gone through. So I think there's some real advantages there. as you know, our policy is firmly that it's for Queensland practitioners to decide what's best for their own clients and their own practices. So we encourage a diverse and competitive e-conveyancing market, and we think that when the business case has been explained to people by the LNOs, then Queensland practitioners will be there and fully on board with the whole idea.
You know, again, we've discussed this. One of the solutions we do have at the moment is Settle It, which is, I guess, a product that's available to those law firms and your members who haven't yet made that transition to e-settlements, haven't registered with an LNO as yet, and they're able to use Settle It as almost that, you know, similar to how they would use a settlement clerk previously. They can outsource that work. It can be done. It's available once a contract has gone unconditional, and really the Settle It team take care of the booking of settlement through the electronic settlement platform or the LNO. So I'm working in that, you know, I guess that transition phase to assist the clients through not only these challenging times, but as you just alluded to, maybe finding more time in the actual conveyancing process itself.
I'd say to small firms that aren't ready to make the full transition to e-conveyancing themselves to consider that kind of transitional method, because you're going to find a lot of your clients who are very under enormous financial pressure are going to be able to need to settle, and they're going to need you to be multilingual and be able to just settle in whatever environment the buyers are ready to go in. And I think you're going to need to be able to offer them as many options as possible. And this is not the time when law firms will be in a position to leave work on the table, put it that way.
No, I agree. I think I wrote something at the beginning of the year and shared it with a few clients, and you know, it was almost about just trialing something once every couple of months in your firm. May it, you know, allow you to put this roadmap together of where you see your firm going from a digital sort of solution. Interestingly, by, you know, the end of March, early April this year, people were forced into trial a multitude of different products and services. But you know, I think, as I said earlier, we're pretty resilient, and it's been interesting to watch people actually adapt to it quite well, both from a professional point of view, but also from a consumer point of view. I think consumers have now come to expect and said, okay, I can actually sign this electronically, or I can actually complete this on my phone. And certainly that, as we go forward, I think sets up some good ideas for lawyers to think about as we go forward. David, that's been great. I always, you know, love catching up with you, and we seem to have some similar thoughts on things. Is there anything you'd like to leave, you know, I guess our clients or your members with before we finish around these times at the moment?
Yes, I think the message we'd really like to get across is law societies and professional associations, we're really here for the hard times, and this is when we, you know, earn our bread and butter. And if you're having problems with whatever it is, give us a call. I mean, if we don't know the answer, we will often be able to connect you with people that do. We found that practitioners are really stepping up to the plate in terms of helping each other. So often, you know, what we can do is say, hey, there is this firm over here and they've had that experience. They know what they're doing. Why don't you give them a call? And we have found 9 times out of 10, the people on the receiving end of that call are very generous with their time. And, you know, if they can't help, then they at least give them, you know, whatever assistance they can. So if there's that takeaway message, if you're having a problem, give us a call. If we can't solve it, we'll try and connect you with someone that will. So thanks very much, Lee. I really enjoyed our chat, and anytime.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dave. And I think that's it's a good way to finish, that no one's in this on their own. We're all sort of getting through it together. And please, if you'd like to hear anything further about what we've discussed today, whether that's from the Queensland Law Society, please reach out to QLS or David directly, or if it's from an InfoTrack perspective, any of the products we've mentioned, please reach out to either myself or InfoTrack.